My name is Samuel Oliver Gracewood, though everyone I love simply calls me Sam. This story is about my grandmother, Eleanor Rosebeth Carter Whitley, a woman whose kindness touched every corner of my childhood. She always greeted me with a soft smile, even when her voice had grown quiet and weak. Near the end of her life, her laughter faded, replaced by long silences and gentle, thoughtful sighs. She spent her final weeks inside a small hospital room filled with pale sunlight and quiet beeping sounds. The hospital was clean and calm, but it always carried a soft, lonely sadness within its walls. Her room was simple: a bed, a wooden chair, and one wide window that faced the open sky. That window became her world, her view, and her final connection to everything beyond those walls. Every afternoon I visited her, bringing her favorite cookies, small flowers, or sometimes a soft wool blanket. She always thanked me with a tender smile that made the cold hospital room feel a little warmer. We talked, but not much. Our words were small ripples on a quiet lake of time. Most of the day, she sat silently in her chair, her eyes fixed beyond the window's glass. She watched the sky for hours, her gaze calm, steady, and filled with something I could not name. Her body had grown fragile, her hands thin as paper, but her eyes still sparkled like morning dew. She never looked at the cars below or the tall gray buildings beyond the street. Her attention was always lifted upward, toward the endless blue sky that stretched like a gentle dream. She watched drifting clouds, slow and soft, as if each one carried a memory she recognized. Sometimes she followed a bird with her eyes until it disappeared beyond the edge of the clouds. At night, she would gaze at the moon and stars as though they whispered secrets only she could hear. Watching her, I often wondered what stories the sky was telling her in its silent language. Why did she look upward every day, her face glowing softly in the pale morning light? Was she simply passing the time? Or was she waiting for something none of us could see? I began to feel that she carried a secret, one she shared only with the wide, waiting sky. One soft afternoon, I sat quietly beside my grandmother in her small white hospital room. Sunlight poured gently through the wide window, filling the space with a warm, golden hush. She was in her usual chair, her thin hands resting still, her eyes lifted toward the sky. Her smile was small but peaceful, like someone remembering something beautiful they can almost touch. I held her fragile hand carefully, afraid my fingers might break its quiet, trembling stillness. Her skin was cool and thin, like delicate silk folded too many times through the years. After a while, I whispered, "Grandma, what do you see when you look out there?" She turned her head slowly, her eyes glowing with that strange, soft light I didn't understand. She smiled again, the kind of smile that holds both sadness and joy in equal measure. "I'm looking at the sky, my dear," she said, her voice calm and almost musical. "I know," I told her gently. "But what is it that you see up there?" She looked back toward the sky, her face bathed in sunlight, her voice barely a whisper. "I see your grandfather, Edward Harrison Whitley, standing there, smiling like he always did when I sang. Her words startled me, though they came so softly I almost thought I'd imagined them. My grandfather had been gone for many years, buried before I was even old enough to understand. How could she see him now, through that window, beyond the soft layers of sky and light? I thought maybe her mind was fading, slipping gently between memories and dreams she could not separate. Maybe she was confused, I told myself, or simply lost in the gentle fog of old age. But her eyes didn't look lost. They looked certain, filled with peace and quiet understanding. She wasn't afraid, and she wasn't sad. She seemed to be waiting for something kind and familiar. "He's there, Sam," she said softly. "He's waiting for me, and he still looks so handsome." Then she closed her eyes, and for a moment her smile deepened, glowing like morning light. I wanted to ask her more, but I couldn't bring myself to break her peace. So I sat beside her, still holding her hand, staring out the same bright window. All I could see was the wide blue sky, calm and endless, full of light. But she, I knew, saw something more, something my eyes were not yet meant to find. The next morning I arrived at the hospital before the sun had fully risen above the city. The hallways were quiet, filled with soft light and the faint hum of early machines. A nurse met me at the door, her eyes gentle as she said my grandmother had grown weaker. Her voice was calm, but her words carried the weight of something final and unchangeable. I walked into the room and found my grandmother lying still beneath the thin white blanket. Her chair by the window sat empty, waiting, its cushion still shaped by her gentle frame. Her eyes were closed now, her breathing slow and light, like the whisper of a feather. I sat beside her bed and took her hand, though it felt colder than before. The air in the room was still, holding the fragile silence between one heartbeat and another. I watched her sleep for a long time, afraid to move or even breathe too loudly. Outside the window, the horizon began to glow softly with the first light of morning. The pale gold of dawn spread across the buildings, painting everything with a tender, quiet warmth. The sunlight reached into the room, spilling gently across the floor and climbing slowly up her bed. It touched her face at last, lighting her features with a soft, almost heavenly glow. Right then, she took one final breath, small and light as a falling snowflake. And just like that, the breath was gone, leaving only stillness and a strange, peaceful calm. She looked as though she were only sleeping, dreaming beneath the warmth of that rising sun. But I knew in my heart that she had left, following the light toward the sky she loved. Her face remained serene, her lips faintly curved as if she'd finally found what she'd been seeking. I sat there in silence, tears slipping down my cheeks, my fingers still wrapped around her hand. The sun climbed higher, and the room filled completely with golden morning light and gentle warmth. It felt as though the sky itself had reached down to carry her soul away. She had waited for the light, I realized, waited for the dawn to open her final door. And as I sat there weeping, I also felt an unfamiliar peace settle softly in my chest. She wasn't in pain anymore, and she wasn't alone in that small, quiet hospital room. Somehow I believed she had gone to meet him, my grandfather, waiting just beyond the morning sky. A few quiet weeks after her passing, I returned to the hospital to gather her remaining belongings. The air inside felt heavier, filled with echoes of footsteps and the faint scent of disinfectant. When I reached her old room, the door stood open, revealing a space that felt completely different. The bed was neatly made, smooth and untouched, as though it were waiting for another story to begin. Her chair by the window sat empty, its shadow long and quiet against the pale floor tiles. The whole room felt hollow now, stripped of her warmth, her breath, her gentle laughter. But the big window still stood there, glowing softly with the same kind, golden morning light. The sunlight poured through, exactly as it had on the day she took her final breath. I walked across the silent room and stood where her chair once waited faithfully every afternoon. Through the glass, the sky spread wide and endless, bright blue with thin white clouds drifting slowly. It was the same sky she had loved, the same sky she had spoken to each day. I stood there for a long time, breathing in the stillness, feeling her presence all around me. I looked up, hoping to see something, anything that might explain what she had truly seen there. But all I saw was the sky itself, vast and soft, like an ocean of light. Still, I thought about her smile, calm and sure, when she said, "I see your grandfather." Maybe love does not disappear when the body fades. It only changes its shape, quietly, beautifully. Maybe her love for him was so strong it bridged the space between earth and heaven. Maybe her eyes saw only sky, but her heart saw something far greater, something eternal. Now, whenever I feel lonely or lost, I look up at that same endless blue sky. I don't see them there, but I feel them, like sunlight resting softly on my shoulders. Their love is still here, unseen yet present, warm as morning and constant as starlight. Love, I've learned, does not end. It transforms, becoming the quiet music of memory and air. It waits for us in small moments, in light, in sky, in the spaces between words. My grandmother, Eleanor Rosebith Carter Whitley, taught me that love has no walls, no limits, and no goodbye. And whenever I look up, I remember her voice whispering gently, "Always, my dear, just look up."